I don't think people realize that you're having a physical reaction. When you are triggered, there is something physical that goes on in your body. Your prefrontal cortex is the thinking part of your brain. When you sense some kind of threat, that shuts off, and your amygdala, which is the reptilian, the base part of your brain, is the only thing that's working, and it can only fight, flight, or freeze. You can't think through what you're going to say or how you're going to respond. You're going to either yell something inappropriate or you're going to run away.
Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today our guest, Jill Kaufman, is a therapist, divorce coach, mediator, co-parenting expert, and what I'm most excited about, we are having a conversation specific to how do you lower conflict in the divorce process, in the co-parenting process, because the reality is conflict is going to be there. There are going to be disagreements. You and your ex are not going to be on the same page. You probably weren't in your marriage, which is why it landed in divorce. So how do we navigate the next chapter? What steps do we take? What can we control to reduce the conflict? Because as we know, when there's less conflict, it is better for everybody involved. So Jill, welcome to the show. I am really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Erica, so much for having me.
And Jill, you are also a fellow divorcee, so welcome to the club. You have navigated this and it helped kind of shift where your focus was, where your passion was, and the work you do now, helping support not only other divorced individuals, but also divorced professionals.
Absolutely. Yes. I know how it feels. I think it makes you a better professional when you understand that.
And it's definitely one of those topics that, and this is like no shade on therapists, but when they haven't been there, done that, it's a little different. Can they pull from the books? Can they understand what's happening inside the body and inside the mind? For sure. But there is just something about walking this path and understanding what does the conflict really look like when we're in it and how do we avoid that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's dive a little bit into that. What made you so passionate about the topic of reducing conflict, specifically lowering conflict?
Yeah. Well, so I went through my divorce in 2012, a long time ago now. And I was a therapist and I thought I could do this. I'll be able to be friends with my ex and protect my children. I'm not going to make a ton of mistakes because, I know how to do that, right? I was not correct. I made so many mistakes. I hurt my children. I did things, out of emotion, which we all do. And so I really learned a lot, and I'm able to put myself in someone's shoes that I'm working with and understand how hard it is to do what I'm telling them they should do. And so there are tricks, on how to do that I developed. And actually, during my divorce process, I figured out a way to avoid court. I figured out a way to know what to give up. And that takes a lot of detachment from what all the emotion is. I didn't do that right away, but eventually I was able to figure out how to get to the end of my divorce without being in court.
I want to thank you too for saying that. You said I made mistakes. It's so powerful. You're not going to get through this perfectly. That's not the point. If we got our end result that we didn't like based on an action that we took, then what do we change based on that? And it takes self-awareness. It takes self-control because those emotions, the emotional roller coaster is riding fast and furious, and it's trying to pull you along for the ride. And so it is a lot about becoming aware of when we are triggered, when we are moving towards taking a reactive choice instead of choosing action. What would you say are the biggest triggers that gets somebody to step into the conflict instead of avoiding it?
Oh, there are so many. I'll give you an example. I did 95% of everything for the kids. Even though I was working, I was really mostly responsible for taking the kids to school, helping with homework, driving them places. When we were going through the divorce, my ex wanted 50-50 custody because in New Jersey, that's what you get. And obviously he should have 50-50 custody if he wants to, if he's not an abuser and, he can parent the kids. He's not addicted, but I felt that was so not fair. And then, like so many things happened related to that. Like he said he didn't want to start taking the kids himself until we divorced. You're fighting for 50% custody, but you're not going to do it until we get divorced and I move out. Like, how is that fair? Like, there's just so many things that when I look back, I'm like, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
so what? He didn't want to start till we got divorced. You don't think things are fair, right? Both
100%.
sides. Everybody feels that way. Nothing seems fair. And those are big triggers for people, especially when you're vulnerable and emotional and going through all of this.
I was just seeing a post on Facebook, one of the divorce groups I was in. Somebody was writing something similar. I was the stay-at-home parent. He didn't ever really do anything. I did 95%. And we're sitting here and he's trying to argue for 50-50. And I think in those moments, this is where the self-awareness has to come in because we can all sit in a space. I sat in a space of my ex didn't parent as good as me. He didn't run the house as good as me. Whatever the thing is we create in our story, this is going to be one of those instances where we have to ask ourselves, okay, so he runs a different schedule in the morning to get them to school or a different bedtime, got bedtime routines, right? Maybe he lets them stay up later. Maybe he doesn't give them a snack before bedtime the way you do. You've got to decide if that's really the deal breaker or if that's just a different way of doing things, because otherwise we do get stuck fighting because our mama hearts want our kids to be okay. They want things to be the same. We want to make it as easy as possible on them. But you are going to be challenged to accept the fact that there is more than just your way of doing things. And you've got
Yes.
to give that ex some room to step into it.
Yes. And also, you have to think about what's best for the children. Just because you're more nurturing or you are better at helping them with their homework or whatever it is, doesn't mean they don't need a relationship with the other parent. Kids need relationships with both parents. And that is the thing that is so important to keep in mind. And when you're emotional, it's very hard to do that. If they prefer one parent, it's okay that they prefer one parent. They still need a relationship with the other parent. And that's really hard to sit with when you're going through this.
It is, especially if that other parent has done something to you. We can use my instance of that he was having an affair. He had fallen in love with somebody else. He ended up becoming engaged to her. They were engaged for 6 years. She moved in. She was doing the stepmom life for a while. And so it was really challenging to not let my emotions drive what I wanted to say. And were there times and spaces when I was venting? For sure. I had my people that I could call. You have the club community if you don't have people in your circle, but there are spaces that you can put yourself in. And it was a choice I had to make that I was very, I guess aggressive is the word. Like I was committed to making sure that I walked the line of my own core values of love and grace. And so I advocated for why dad time was so important with my son when he didn't want to go. I would make comments, your dad loves you too. Your dad wants to spend time with you. This is important time. I'm excited for you to go spend time with him. They were not easy things to say,
Yeah.
but they were statements that need to be made because you are literally walking through a very emotional, challenging situation that the two adults probably do hate each other in the moment. There's a lot of resentment built up, but it is also your responsibility as a parent to not leak that into your child.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I'm very impressed that you did that because that's a really hard thing to do, but it is the right thing to do. And kids need to hear that from their parent. They can't hear, well, I get what you're talking about. They're awful. That is not what you should say. It doesn't mean you don't validate their feelings, but you don't pile on because it is their parent and they are, no matter what, they are a piece of both of you. And so anything you say negative about the parent feels bad to them.
Yeah. And that's where you can be grounded in the fact that We all know it is best for any child to have access to both parents, unless there's abuse, unless there's something else going on. But in the majority of cases, even if your ex is an asshole, it still benefits that kid to be around them, to have that other energy, that other parenting style, that other world that they have to figure out. And so it can be very difficult to not add to the conflict when you're in those situations, but making that commitment, understanding, hey, I believe it's important. Like, I believe it's important for my son to spend time with his dad. Even now, and if you've been listening, you know that he kind of took a break from seeing his dad for a bit because they were having some conflict of their own. So that turned into, how do we take a little break? How do we work back into a relationship, knowing that I can't control it? It's not my job to control the type of relationship he has with his dad, but it is my responsibility to not get in the way of it.
Right. And depending on their age, I mean, when they're young, they have to go. But as they get older, they do get more empowered to
Mhm.
control that relationship.
Yeah.
And so your messages at those times is important too, because how good does it feel when they've chosen you and don't want to see their other parent? But that's not good for them. They really have to figure that out. And they may not be as close to them, but they still can have a relationship.
Yeah. And, one of the tools that I used then to lean into was I always try and put myself on the other side. How might they be seeing this situation? I don't have to agree with how they're seeing it. To use a real recent example, there's differing parent styles on school choices for these kids that I'm thinking about. And so you have two parents who are both arguing for what they believe is the best interest of their kids, but the parents are on the opposite sides. And so it feels very conflicted. It feels very much me versus you. But that tool or that trick that I use, and this is the same thing I had to use when my son was little, was okay, what might that parent be doing? Where is this the benefit of the doubt? So I'm not fighting against them, but okay, we have this problem. It's us versus the problem, the school. Which school does this child need to go to? What's the best for this child? And when we can start to apply that lens, we can start to take some of the personal attack out of it. And that's going to be so crucial for your kids. So that was the tool I used. Okay, what's going on in my ex's head as he's, demanding A or B for our son when he was 4, 5, 6, when he was little? What could I say? Well, you know what? Your dad really loves you, but maybe he doesn't know how to spend that time together. When we can do that, we're teaching our kid to start to think through the lens of there's other people in the world. What might they be experiencing? And how is that creating the action or the result versus, oh, they don't like me or it's a problem about me. And so that helped us avoid, even right now, that helps us mitigate that parent talking badly about the other parent. Hey, why might they be doing it for a good reason? Not just to fight you, not just to say, screw you, I'm going to do everything in my powers to make your life miserable.
Well, I get that a lot with clients. They think that they're doing that just to get them. They think that they're just being difficult. And what I try to tell clients is that some people, they will do everything just to get you. But most people have real convictions that are different than yours. And they're not trying to get you. They think that they're right, just like you think you're right. And so if you can look at it that way, that, we have different opinions and I need to respect their opinion, even though I don't understand it, even though I don't agree with it, they're entitled. One of the reasons we're not together is probably we're very different people. So we're not going to agree on these things. And we just have to be respectful that that's what the other person thinks. And how can we come up with a compromise? How can we figure out a way through this that everybody can be okay?
Yeah. And spoiler alert, ladies, sometimes you just have to say, let's try your way and see if it works. Because I would say a lot of the conflict, not conflict, but a lot of the resistance, the difficulties that sometimes I was creating was because I was holding on that line that it had to be my way or the highway. And once I said, okay, maybe there's a third alternative, maybe it'll be just fine. If I let go of how bedtimes run, maybe it'll be just fine. And a lot of times it was. But let's talk through when you're in the middle of conflict. What does somebody have to do? What are there some steps that they should say, okay, so now we've stepped into it. We know we're either headed towards an argument or we're in an argument. We can't control what they do, but what do we need to do within ourself, within our control to help reduce the conflict in the moment?
Great question. So if you're in a conflict, speaking to each other, nothing's going to happen if you're emotional. And so if you're in conflict, if you're just in a disagreement, you can talk through that. But if you're actually in conflict and you're emotional, nothing is going to be accomplished by continuing the conversation. So it's much better to say, hey, why don't we both think about this and we can either email each other or set up another time to talk. I really encourage people to email, not text, because texts you can get emotional and you can send them off and it's not the best way to communicate. But an email, you can look through, you can put through ChatGPT, you can ask a friend to read, and you can really think about the way you're communicating. And it's very important the way you communicate. I get so many emails from clients where they think they're being really unemotional, but I change it around and they're like, oh my God, that's so much better. Because you're not objective. You're just not objective. And ChatGPT is not a person. So it'll help, but it doesn't get the nuances of things. It's good to get help as you go through this. And then you get the hang of it. You see, yes, I have to be friendly and I'm not being friendly, or I have to not say that thing that I always say to them, because there's so many things. You have this history with people. I was married 20 years. It's very hard to break those patterns. And you really have to do this mindset shift that where you were married and now you're not, and now you're more like colleagues and coworkers. And it's very hard to do that.
There's a lot of old momentum that's built, a lot of old patterns. I even think just what you were saying about sending a text, one of the choices I made was instead of just sending off whatever random question was in my mind that I needed to ask my ex about, I would say something like, good morning, just a little line, or like, hello, period. Here's the question. Because when somebody just sends over a question to you, it feels very demanding because I don't have any communication with this person outside of when we are now dealing with our teenage son. We're not calling to talk about the day. We're not calling to tell you how his bedtime went. It is like, what's the schedule look like this week? Are you taking him on a summer vacation this summer? He got his learner's permit the other week. Here's what I think should happen when he's driving. So when you put those just little buffers in there, it can change how the other person responds. And then same thing, call yourself out. What is the tone that you're reading that email or that text in? And is that really what's being said, or is that old energy?
Yeah. I mean, just saying good morning, you're absolutely right. Changes the way somebody's going to receive that. And that is, a little thing that you can do. You must have done a lot of work because it sounds like you are able to control yourself very, very well.
That's right. I mean, some days, whew, if I don't get a lot of sleep, those days, but then I have systems. I know I don't send off that text. I might pull open my notepad app on my phone and I might keyboard warrior everything I want to say, but I don't send that. I never send that first draft. I never anymore step into allowing emotions to control or dictate how I act because it doesn't end well. And so that, like, I see you emotions. Yes, you're flaring up. Yes, I really want to say these things, but I have learned, like you were saying, it's a skill. I learned that if I let some time pass, if I take a nap, if we give them, hey, let me think about this and respond to you tomorrow, those are all things I can do to make sure that I operate from my core values and not my emotions.
Yeah, time is huge because the thing you think is so important in the moment, when you get some distance from that, when you have some time to calm down, wake up tomorrow, you have a whole new, way to view it. That's huge. Don't answer right away. Really think about it and get away from it and then come back to it. And you'll be surprised how different you see that. So that's a good tool too. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many things that you can do if you're really having trouble doing this, therapy, right? You got to work through your issues because it's bringing up probably childhood issues that are going on. But if you are able to detach at certain times, you just got to get some skills like taking time, reading it over, letting someone else read it. There's lots of things that you can do.
Yeah. And that's a really good thing to point out is that most times relationships are mirrors, you guys. They are reflecting the places that you have left to do a little work on yourself. And so most times it's never actually that issue. It has snowballed from all of the years of something in the marriage, which actually only became an issue in the marriage, probably because it showed up in your childhood first. And so that's where, whether it's therapy, we do some of the work of that in the club. Jill and I both work one-on-one with private clients too, to give you that space because it is so beneficial to have somebody outside looking at it and helping you see the patterns and helping you uncover those deeper roots. Like I really love doing a little timeline travel. If you have ever done that with me, we sit down an hour and we go back and we find 3 places in your past that most likely you don't even know that they're still controlling you. We'll get into a little meditative state. We go back and we find them, and people are like, wow, I didn't realize that this was a big root of where it's coming from.
I get that all the time with my therapy clients because I say, did you have any trauma or any significant history? And they're like, no, I had a regular childhood, 2 parents and siblings. And then we go back and they're like, oh yeah, my dad was had a little alcohol issue. I'm like, oh, your dad was an alcoholic. That's a big deal. Oh yeah, my parents left me, someplace, and I had a client who they left them for, when they were little for a significant amount of time. And they just didn't really think that it bothered them. But everything that goes on in your life has an impact, especially as a child. That's why we're trying to protect children right now. That can bring patterns of things that you don't want to repeat in your life. And that's why it's so important, like you said, to learn from what you've experienced in your marriage, learn how your child has impacted that if that's happening, and then not repeat that, because so many people will get divorced and then get into a relationship that has similarities, and that's not what you want.
Yeah, you date the same man, but in a different leather jacket is kind of like whatever that statement goes. We recreate the same thing unless we learn how to break the pattern. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about when conflict is there, some of the things we can do. We gave you some tips on things you can do to help protect or avoid. Say good morning first before jumping straight into a demand. Along those lines, too, I ask questions instead of make demands like, hey, this is what I think would be the right solution. Any concern around that? I can open it up without giving them full reign. Let's talk a little bit about how to regulate once you're in conflict. So we did say walking away, but there are some other things. There's some emotional capacity that you can work on when you're outside of conflict to make sure that you can handle it when it comes up. What are some of those tips that you have?
So breathing. I know a lot of
Mm.
people talk about breathing, but they're real deep abdominal breaths. Most people, when they do deep breathing, they're like, those are chest breaths, and that gets you more upset, so that's not going to calm you down. But if you do deep abdominal, just Google deep abdominal breathing.
I'll
And
give you one better because it's sitting right here. This little tool, you guys hear me talk about it all the time because I am an affiliate for it because I love it that much. Can you do deep abdominal breathing? Yes. Can you do straw breathing? Yes. This mimics like straw breathing. The reason I really like having a tool is when the shit hits the fan, I just want to rely on something else. And so can I tell myself, do the breath work? Yes. But if my mind is like, I don't want to do this, get away, get away, get away, it can be hard to tell yourself to do it. And so instead, like I have my little tool, you wear it, it's a cute necklace. This one's pink. There's all different colored ones, but it's cool on your lip, which immediately brings you into the present moment. It controls that breathing. So the inhale versus the exhale gets longer. It makes you have to pull from your abdominal muscles because you can't snort in through your nose on shallow breathing. And so do the deep breaths. And if you're having trouble with it, go get the shift and download and use the tool. I wore it every single day because every
I
time
never
it
heard
hit,
that.
yeah. Oh my gosh, you're going to love it. I'm going to send you the link for this too. They have bracelets. It looks like jewelry, but it is your lifeline to regulate your system through breath. And you can wear it every day and it is just there for you.
I just want to back up a little bit. Like, I don't think people realize that you're having a physical reaction when
Yeah.
you are triggered by your soon to be ex or your ex. There is something physical that goes on in your body, and it's your amygdala. So your prefrontal cortex is the thinking part of your brain, and that when you sense some kind of threat, that shuts off, and your amygdala, which is the reptilian, the base part of your brain, is the only thing that's working, and it can only fight, flight, or freeze. Those are the only options for your amygdala. And so you can't think through what you're going to say or how you're going to respond. You're going to either yell something inappropriate or you're going to run away. And that, running away is better than yelling, but both are not ideal. And so that's why something like what you're talking about, a tool that you can calm yourself down with, is so important, because you're really not going to respond well if you don't calm yourself down. So So yeah, this deep breathing. There's also visualizations. I use something called the bubble technique. And so you envision yourself in a bubble. It's very safe and you're quiet, and you envision the other person, could be anybody, in their bubble, and they're far away. So if it's your ex, they're all of a sudden they're saying something, they're sending a text, you get something from a lawyer, and their bubble starts coming closer and closer and closer, and you start getting upset and you're not regulated, or you're talking to them and you get upset and unregulated. So you visualize a golden falling from the sky and falling in between your bubble and their bubble, pushing their bubble very far, far away. So then you look around and you're back in your bubble and you're calm and nothing can affect you. And you take some deep breaths and you feel so much better. So visualizing this is nice for people because, it gives you something to think about when this is going on. And you can think all kinds of things. You can think their bubble is going, up into the sky, to the moon, wherever you want it to. And even laughing is really good when you're going through this, because anything to get you out of that fight or flight response is helpful.
I love that. And it is so powerful. Something hits. I want you to shift your attention to your body because you're feeling it somewhere, even if you don't notice it, because we are still running 100 miles an hour. And that has been a really powerful tool for me to be able to distinguish what's real and what's not. Your mind tells you all these thoughts. It creates all these stories and it thinks so fast on a well-worn path of my ex is always an asshole. He's always trying to dictate. He's just trying to get under my skin. He's trying to do these things against me. It's going to run that path fast. And so if instead we say, oh, I feel anxious in my body. So mine feels like my skin is crawling. Like I just want to get out of whatever is like tingling down my back, or I want to hide under my covers, or I need to curl up in a ball. That's that physical sensation saying, oop, we're shifting out of prefrontal cortex where I can make smart, intelligent decisions. And we're moving into that reptilian brain where I'm a little lizard, which does what? Either I fight or I run away. I get spooked, right? And those are the big ones that happen. So breath work, visualizing, all I could think of was like the Wizard of Oz, where they're in the little bubble and they're floating away with their like wand scepter. I like that. And that also ties into then what I wanted to ask, which is similar, preparing for it. So I love to talk about something called pre-paving. You can do it. I used to do it all the time in a corporate setting. Before I went into a meeting, I pre-paved. What did that mean? It meant I visualized what outcome did I hope was going to happen? Where did I want it to go? How did I want the interaction between me and, at that point, my boss? It was difficult to not get really frustrated with him. So I could pre-pave. Did it guarantee a perfect outcome? No, but it got my energy in check. So I wasn't walking into the meeting already defensive, already annoyed at something that hadn't even happened. And so there are some things too that can really help you. If you know you're about to go do a pickup, if you know you have to talk to your ex about the upcoming school schedule and what it's going to look like, there are regulatory tools. That sounds like soccer. I've had too much World Cup on right now. There are tools to help you regulate. What are some of your go-to, Jill, that you recommend people do before they have to have a meeting with somebody that's a little bit heightened?
Well, I definitely recommend practicing the deep breathing because your lungs are a muscle. And the more you practice, the lungs are going to expand and you're going to be able to do that so much easier.
In fact, you guys take a deep breath right now. So just big deep breath in through your nose, feel your belly completely extend. And exhale out, purse your lips if you want, kind of like a straw, allowing it fully to drop out of the body. Do you see how much you shifted already? You guys, just that one breath of somebody guiding you. Sorry to cut you off, but I was like,
No.
Everybody needs a big deep breath. Right now, we've been talking about conflict for 30 minutes and they're all wound up.
Totally. No, I think we need to do this anytime during the day before you go to sleep. Meditation is really good, but self-talk, we haven't really talked about that. Self-talk is really important. So if you, like you said, you come into seeing your ex and you already predetermined it's going to be bad, that is not good self-talk. So talk to yourself and say, I can handle this. I've handled it before. This is not going to be a problem. I know how to do this. So all that positive self-talk, I mean, for therapists, cognitive behavioral therapy involves self-talk, and it's one of the most researched tools that therapists use, and it's the most effective. So you think you're not really doing anything, you're changing, it feels weird, but it really is effective in changing the way you feel. And you can walk into that, encounter in a much better place. And even when you're in the encounter, you could use that, the self-talk, like, I don't have to deal with this. I can walk away. This is going to be okay. So like the prep is the self-talk, the practice breathing. There's something called progressive relaxation. Have you heard of that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, relaxing yourself before you go in, it's where you squeeze your muscles and then release them. So doing that really can calm you down. That's a really effective tool also.
So one of the quick ways while you guys are listening, even if you're driving, you can do this one too, but just to feel the difference in it. If you squeeze your shoulders all the way up to your ears and hold that for 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1, and release and let them drop, right? There's a big difference. And so when we repeat that and when we tighten a muscle and we say activate and work really hard and hold all that stress, all that pressure, all that whatever, and then we release it, there's such a big difference between the tight tension and the relaxed portion that you're, again, connection between how does my body feel right now? You are starting to learn and you're strengthening the muscle that enables you to see. So now you're sitting in a meeting and slowly those shoulders are creeping up to your ears, but you don't realize because you're not paying attention. And then they might be all the way up there touching your earlobes and you're like, oh, wait a second. Let me relax this. Now, the trick would be I'd tell you squeeze it tighter one more time and then relax because it's really hard when something has activated like that, when your body is moving into a protective stance. That's why it's getting tight. It's like, ooh, do I need to run? Do I need to fight? The body is turning on that aspect. Then take your control back, tighten it up again, and let it go.
Yeah. No, that's great. Just being aware that your body is so connected to the way you feel, that's a big advantage that you have if you can really be aware of your body, check in with it, and understand how to relax it.
I love that. It's all tools, you guys. You get to add tools to your toolbox. Some you'll use heavily for a while and then maybe you retire it. Some of the other ones, I used to always carry crystals in my pockets. You can get into the whole woo-woo side of crystals of like, ooh, okay, I'm bringing this energy into the meeting. Or you can say it's a really nice, cool, smooth stone that helped me feel supported in the moment. So when I was sitting there at the table having to talk with him or via text, I could touch that thing, that tool, that physical thing and say, oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm supported right now and I am going to get through this. So there are skills you learn, there's muscles you develop, there's tools that you can use, but it's these small choices that shift you away from conflict instead of allowing it to continue to build.
Right. Yeah. And conflict is something that you're going to have it, but you don't want to escalate it. And so having these tools is going to help you not escalate it.
Yeah, because you've got to get past the fight or flight. That just leaves the conflict there, stays forever. If your answer becomes, oh my God, we're going to fight about this thing again, so I give up. I give up. That is not a long-term solution. And you can't get to the logical thinking part of your brain to say, can we problem solve this? Is there a third alternative? Can we look at something else? Because again, you've already given up. You've already in that fight or flight. The mind and the body won't let you get there. And so small shifts are going to make a big difference.
And you're doing what's best for your children, right? You're trying to help them have parents who can communicate and work through solutions so it's not on them.
100%. Because even right now, I was my darling teenager, right? His biggest challenges, the things that caused him the most stress were school and the pressure he was feeling from his dad. Well, it's summer, so there's no school, and he hasn't seen his dad. They've been going out to dinner once a week, but we haven't had a couple, sleepovers, nights over in a while. And so he's like, I'm fixed. And I was like, not if the answer is you're just avoiding the problem. Like we need to take a break because we need to calm down. And while you're taking a break, you're doing all those tools to self-regulate. Going for a walk, maybe you're journaling, maybe you're doing a meditation. Another big one, music. Create a great playlist. The vibe of the music that you listen to prior to going in sets the tone. Are you going in to fight? Are you going in to cry? Are you going in to grieve? Like, what is it? Create a playlist that there are just a couple songs on my meditating playlist that I can hit play and And all of a sudden I'm like chanting along and my whole body feels different and I find myself in that flow. So using those tools are going to set you up for success. So you're in the calm time, you're practicing, you're building emotional resiliency, you're learning how to read the signals in your body and then do something about it if they're moving in the wrong direction, so that when you're in the moment with your ex, you're stronger and able to handle it.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about if you have an ex who's avoiding things.
Hmm.
You may not be in conflict, you may not, have big fights, but they're avoiding you. They're not answering your emails or they're not talking to you about things that are really important. And that triggers people. I'm not important enough. I'm not worthy. Like this is all going on in your head. And what you have to realize is that they're probably not avoiding you because they don't think you're important. They're probably avoiding you because they're just not good at dealing with things like that. And avoiding is easier. And so the more that you go after someone like that, the more that they're going to avoid. So you have to really don't personalize all of that and make sure that you realize they have their issues. It's not about you. It's about them. So you have to rethink how you're going to approach them and do it in a way that they won't feel like it's too much, or do it in a way where you're more easily able to get them to hear you.
Yeah. I love that too, because I bet you there's a lot of listeners on the other side being like, okay, this is great, Erica. You and Jill have given us a ton of things that we can do. What about them? What about they're not answering my email? They're not giving me an answer. I need to get this thing done. And so the more you pursue somebody who is avoidant, the more they avoid, you do get stuck in that power struggle. They kind of do hold all the power because they're just not answering you. And so in those situations, again, how we handle conflict, okay, what might be happening on their side? What do I know from all the years we've been together that triggers them to pull away, or that makes them a little bit more likely to be able to converse with me? How could I come at it a different way? How could I break it down into smaller steps to try and get a little bit of movement to start moving forward? It isn't about like powering your way through, but it's really about how do we get creative to still get to an answer without it being a head-to-head battle.
And you have to choose your battles with those people, because you have to let some of those things go. And, it's too bad, right? You wish you could talk to them about a lot of things, but sometimes you can't. And that's okay. You've got to make decisions on your own, and you've got to, parent on your own more with those type of people.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to share, and then if you have anything else to add too, Jill, is, in most of these situations, okay, you get to the point of divorce, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of past baggage going on. And all of a sudden, paperwork is signed, or you make the decision to divorce, and you're expected to instantly shift into a completely new role, right? You're expected to be like, okay, well, it's done now. So now everything should just be fine. And that's not realistic. And so the thing I want to remind you of is, again, a marathon, not a sprint. And it's going to take consistency. It's going to take repeatedly showing up calm. It's going to take being creative and trying different ways to work things out. Now, for the majority of co-parenting or conflict situations, if you show up differently, you learn to regulate yourself, you show up in less of an attack, you're willing to work through things in a new manner, the conflict will shift. You'll be able to start to get pointed in the same direction. So instead of pointed at each other and pushing against each other, slowly steering a ship a different direction. A big ship takes a long time, but eventually you can get going in the right direction. Does it work for everything? No. But what you do find is that if you do the practices where you're regulating yourself, you're choosing to show up different, and you really are trying to do what's in the best interest for the kids. So get your issues out of the way and say, okay, really what's in their best interest? You'll see a lot of improvement. If it doesn't improve, then you know that you're in one of those situations where maybe they are, I hate to use the narcissism word, but maybe they are narcissistic, right? Great episode. Is he an asshole or is he a narcissist? A lot of them are just being assholes right now. And when you change how you show up, they become less of an asshole. It is way easier. It is way easier. It will not feel like it in the moment, but it is way easier to learn how to work with somebody in a new manner than to constantly try and leverage the courts to force them to do something. And so give it a shot. What is it going to hurt you if you take some time to try and show up different instead of getting in a locked battle? Hopefully they change. And if they don't, then you understand that you're in one of those few percentages where this is going to be that way for a while. But when I say hopefully they change, I'm talking like give it a year or two of learning how to communicate in a new manner, how to respect each other's differences, how to get past the big emotional roller coaster of like, are my kids going to be okay? And how am I going to pay for this? And I've got a lot of grief and anger over the divorce that still needs to surface. But hopefully, as you apply these techniques, you're going to see a shift start to happen in those conversations.
So I just wanted to add to that. We had, a high conflict divorce, and we did not get along for the first few years. And when he had a big birthday, I made a photo album for him, and I had each of the children write something, heartfelt, and put it in that photo book. And they gave it to him, and they told me that he cried when he got it from the kids. And, from that point on, I really think that the book made a difference. We had a better relationship. And so what I tell people is keep trying, do things, reach out. It can be frustrating, but you never know what the thing is that will change the relationship. And it's so worth it. It's so much easier when you have a relationship that is cordial and amicable than when it's not. And so it's worth it to continue to try, even though if you haven't had success in the past, it doesn't mean that you're not going to in the future.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that. Things can always change. I mean, the only thing that we can guarantee is change is inevitable. It's always going to show up. And so gradually, then suddenly, are you seeing little things? Ooh, this one a little bit better. Also, don't rock the boat. If you're in a good spot, good Lord, don't send the zinger of a text. Things are going well. There are little pieces like that. And so take a deep breath if you're in the middle of divorce conflict or co-parenting conflict, and know that those relationships continue to evolve. And so it can get better, it can get worse. And it is 100% reliant on what is your intention behind how you're showing up.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, I want to thank you, Jill, for joining us today. You guys, you can check out Jill on social media. It's linked down below, as well as her website if you're interested in learning more. Otherwise, if you're looking for a space for support, come check out the club. We meet live every single week to give you a space to vent and to share and to be supported by other women who get it, because life after divorce, it's just a little different. Until next week, you guys give yourself grace, take a few deep breaths, go order your Shift breathing tool. I promise you, it will change your life. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.